Hey everybody, Rob Skinner here. Hey, let me turn this down a little bit. I was inspired today by my buddy, my friend, one of my mentors, a young man named Paul Hutchings, and he was talking about criticism. And this is a subject that I've gone very deep into for many reasons. But I'm going to pose this with a question to start off with. Would you rather be a person where people considered you to be one of those kind of people that bring light into most every scenario you're in, every situation, every room you come into, you brighten it? Or do you want to be known as the person that always seems to be putting a damper on something, maybe bringing a dark cloud, or no matter how great it is that you point out something that is wrong? And let me tell you why that can be, in my opinion, a little bit damaging. And I'm going to try to be self-critical and not outwardly critical to anybody because, I agree with Dale Carnegie that, criticism doesn't have a real good place in our lives. It doesn't serve a very good purpose. And part of my upbringing was in sports. And it was a big influence in my life. It's much of what built my character, and I owe it much. But it also brought an element of where criticism was a good thing, or at least accepted in that format. In sports, you always got a coach slapping your helmet or telling you to work a little harder, or they're going to bench you if you don't hit the ball. Whatever the case may be, it seems like you were always under some type of criticism. Whether you were your stance was right, or your follow through, or whatever. You're always being told what you're doing wrong, and so it was accepted and it was well received by me. And I was able to manifest that into some great things. But I don't think everybody receives criticism the same way. And I'm more about helping people achieve a greater place in life than I am about being right these days. And that's been a long ways for me to go. As a matter of fact, I remember it hasn't been very many years ago, and I've really had to work on this, where maybe my wife and my kids, I'd come home from a long day of work and, I'd trip over something in the doorway. And that's what I would notice. I would notice what was unkept or maybe a little bit out of place. And I wouldn't notice that she'd spent hours and hours, cleaning the place so I'd have a nice place to come home to, or that the meal was ready for me, or whatever the case may be. There was so much more good than there was bad, but yet it was just maybe my managerial eye, maybe my coach's eye, maybe my student athlete's eye that was always looking for how to improve something better. But how it manifested itself was in criticism, and it never went well. It was inappropriate, and it didn't serve me. I remember going to an institute class on marriage, very young into our marriage, and there was a group of adults there, much more mature than Kimberly and I in their marriages, and the bulk of them were much older. And I remember the President Briggs, the institute teacher, asking us to try for 24 hours not to criticize our spouse. And he made it a very emphatic statement stating that there is absolutely zero room for criticism in a marriage. And I remember coming back the next week to that institute class, and almost every person had failed to do that for 24 hours straight, at least the first couple of days, and they got better and better at it. But it took a major conscious effort for people that were in love with eternal perspectives to be with their spouses for time and all eternity, to actually be in a position to where they didn't criticize each other for one day, which they were going to sleep a third of it anyways. So as Paul was talking about this and how he felt like he had damaged a couple of relationships, I can't help but to reflect on how critical I have been of my children, of my wife, my dear wife, of people around me, close to me. And that's not my wishes. So I'm going to make a conscious effort. And I wonder about how you guys feel about that, criticism. And I know people are going to say, well, constructive criticism. But I really think if we focus on people's strengths, and I really feel like if we focus on our commonalities instead of our differences, we stay out of that fray that I fell subject to on social media. Now, let's take the gorilla that just got killed. and this is coming from a lifelong hunter, fisher person, where I enjoy the outdoors, but I also love animals, and I think it's just a tragedy that an animal of that magnitude, of any magnitude, had to die. But where do you draw the line? I mean, a human life versus that. They had protocol. I mean, we can argue all day long, and we can be critical about the mother, but we weren't there. And I mean, I have to tell you, I just visited Justin and Dee with my granddaughter, and we walked away from our truck, and usually she's right on my heels, on my, but there was 5 adults, and we walked away, and my granddaughter stood by the truck, and a few minutes later, we realized she wasn't with us. I mean, I felt panic. I lost my granddaughter for moments. And I mean, so it can happen. I mean, it's not that I don't love her, and it's not that I want anybody to make me feel better about not paying attention to her at that moment. But we were in a very safe area, but it doesn't matter, right? I mean, she could have got into danger in 1 second. There was water to one side. I don't know who could have drove through that, that neighborhood. She could have got run over. I mean, just a number of bad, atrocious things could have happened to a 4-year-old. This is the same age that child was that crawled into a... there's where I might have a little exception. Why was a kid able to even crawl into there? But a life was taken. 2 lives could have been lost. Protocol was followed. I mean, I'm not about to criticize anybody in that situation because I wasn't there. All I know is it was a tragic death. I hope they learned something from it, and I hope some corrective measures are taken. But I know the people that probably took that gorilla's life just feel horrible. I mean, they probably grew up with that gorilla. They probably have been the ones taking care of it. And they probably feel tragic. Yet there was all kinds of people condemning them. Where do we draw that line? I mean, all of a sudden I saw the social media go into where all of a sudden fisher people are bad, hunters are bad, farmers are bad, anybody that has an animal captive is bad, anybody that has a pet is bad. I mean, where do we draw the line? Where does the criticism stop? And I mean, I have a pet monkey. I've had people criticize me for that. That monkey lives 4 times longer in captivity than it does outside of captivity. And anybody that sees my mojo knows that a monkey couldn't be loved anymore. Now, is it right to have him? There's going to be people on both sides of the fence, and I'm okay with that. This is how I live my life, and I don't expect anybody to follow me that doesn't agree with me. But where does criticism stop? And where do we start bringing the light into our lives and that of other people? And where do we stop being the damper? Where do we stop being the shadow, the darkness that we bring into everybody's life? I much would rather keep working to be the light in people's lives. And I'm going to leave you with one last example. I have a young couple, Caleb and Amanda, that have visited us. They're on their way down to a cruise from Tennessee. They come down through Florida, and they asked if they could stop by, and they're at my home right now. I'm out getting something to eat for us, and they're visiting with Hank right now. What a great young couple they are. They're in a business where it takes sales to make money. They've never made a sale. And as I was talking to them, I taught them a little bit about building a why and a legacy life, the reason that you keep doing what they do. And you know what they told me? They said, Rob, we don't care if it takes a year or longer for us to make our first sale. We're here because of the people, the community. We love it. It feels like family to us. And they have been ridiculed in their hometown. It's a small town, and people are pretty set on their ways and about what they're doing. And their attitude is just beautiful. And, these are people... If I sat there and criticized what they were doing wrong, would I be helping them? I congratulated them for the things they're doing right. I gave them some tidbits, but I would be the last person in the world that has a right to criticize them. What a beautiful attitude, and what a much better world it would be if we all looked at ourselves introspectively and judged, people on their intents instead of their actual what comes out on the other end. We tend to judge ourselves on our intent because we know our hearts, but we tend to judge other people on their actions, and we don't really spend too much time looking at their intent. And I think that's critically important for ourselves. I use the word critical in a different way. I think it's important for us to look at people's intent, because most people are great people and they just want the best. So let's do that today. I enjoy your comments, so I would love to hear what you think about what I just said, and maybe look over on Paul's side and see what he's doing. See you guys. See you tomorrow.